This is Land of Havilah, Jeremiah 46. Verse 1 coming up is a one-sentence introduction to the next 6 chapters. Verse 1. Yahweh's word which came to Jeremiah the prophet concerning the nations. Comment: Yahweh said in chapter 1 that he would make Jeremiah a prophet to the nations. Chapters 1 to 45 that we've already covered mostly concerned Judah. Now in chapters 46 to 51, Jeremiah will address the nations directly, one nation at a time. Coming up in verse 2 and for the rest of this chapter, these are Yahweh's words concerning Egypt. Verse 1. Of Egypt concerning the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates in Carchemish, which Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon struck in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. Comment in verse 2, Nebuchadnezzar's army defeated Pharaoh Necho's Egyptian army. The battle took place at Carchemish on the Euphrates River, 300 miles north of Jerusalem, in 605 BC, which was the 4th year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. It was a pivotal moment because Nebuchadnezzar was able to continue south after that without much resistance. He took over Judah and the surrounding nations and established himself all the way to the border of Egypt. In verse 2, this prophecy concerns Pharaoh Necho's army as they march out with their allies to confront Nebuchadnezzar at Carchemish. Verse 3, Prepare the buckler and shield, and draw near to battle. Harness the horses, and get up, you horsemen, and stand up with your helmets. Polish the spears, put on the coats of mail. Why have I seen it? They are dismayed and are turned backward. Their mighty ones are beaten down, have fled in haste, and don't look back. Terror is on every side, says Yahweh. Comment: Yahweh sees the Egyptian army preparing for battle at great expense in verses 3 and 4, and sees them fleeing in verse 5. Since Yahweh knew what the result would be, he asked the question why in verse 5. What was the point in resisting Nebuchadnezzar? It makes us wonder how many nations throughout history could have spared the trouble if they had consulted Yahweh first. Going on about Egypt's folly, verse 6. Don't let the swift flee away, nor the mighty man escape. In the north by the river Euphrates they have stumbled and fallen. Who is this who rises up like the Nile, whose waters toss themselves like the rivers? Egypt rises up like the Nile, and his waters toss themselves like the rivers. He says, I will rise up, I will cover the earth, I'll destroy cities and its inhabitants. Comment in verses 6 to 8, the Egyptians are proud and confident as they march headlong to battle. They'll make a U-turn. The swift of Egypt won't be swift enough to flee, nor the mighty man able to escape. Still speaking of Egypt and her allies going up to the battle, verse 9. Go up, you horses, rage, you chariots, let the mighty men go out, Cush and Put who handle the shield, and the Ludim who handle and bend the bow. For that day is of the Lord, Yahweh of armies, a day of vengeance, that he may avenge himself of his adversaries. The sword will devour and be satiated, and will drink its fill of their blood. For the Lord, Yahweh of armies, has a sacrifice in the north country by the river Euphrates. Comment in verses 9 and 10, Yahweh has determined that there will be a sacrifice by the sword. The Egyptian allied armies will die like sacrificial animals. It was a needless sacrifice. Yahweh characterized Nebuchadnezzar as his servant in Jeremiah 25:9, 27:6, and 43:10. Nebuchadnezzar will be Yahweh's agent by which he'll judge the nations, Jeremiah 27:6. So in effect, Egypt is fighting against Yahweh. Coming up, Yahweh says, go shopping in Gilead for balm, but it won't do you any good. Balm will be completely inadequate for your injuries. In this clash of the mighty versus the mighty, men will fall on both sides, but for one side in particular, it'll be a stumble. Verse 11. Go up into Gilead and take balm, virgin daughter of Egypt. You use many medicines in vain. There is no healing for you. The nations have heard of your shame, and the earth is full of your cry. For the mighty man has stumbled against the mighty. They both fall together. Comment in verse 12, the nations will hear of Egypt being put to shame at Carchemish. The earth is full of the Egyptians' cry, which means the people of the world will hear about this battle, and it'll come alive in their imaginations. They'll virtually hear the Egyptians cry out as they're being overcome and set to rout. Now, fast forwarding 20 or more years in this next prophecy, the Babylonians will make war on the Egyptian homeland. This is the war Jeremiah has already prophesied about that will destroy the Egyptians and the Judeans who have fled there. Verse 13. The word that Yahweh spoke to Jeremiah the prophet, how that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, should come and strike the land of Egypt. Declare in Egypt, publish in Migdol, and publish in Memphis and in Tahpanhes. Say, stand up and prepare, for the sword has devoured around you. Why are your strong ones swept away? They didn't stand because Yahweh pushed them. He made many to stumble. Yes, they fell on one another. They said, arise, let's go again to our own people and to the land of our birth from the oppressing sword. They cried there, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is but a noise. He has let the appointed time pass by. Comment, we can make sense of verses 13 to 17 when we know the history. During the third siege of Jerusalem, about 588 BC, Nebuchadnezzar broke away from Jerusalem temporarily because he heard that Pharaoh Necho was coming up from Egypt, Jeremiah 37:5. Necho was blustery, like he was going to take Nebuchadnezzar out, but when he saw Nebuchadnezzar's army, he lost his nerve and almost immediately retreated. Nebuchadnezzar went back to Jerusalem, and when he was finished there, he went to Egypt. Necho had been aggressive with him, so he couldn't afford to go away without dealing with him. With that history in mind, in verse 13, Yahweh told Jeremiah that Nebuchadnezzar would strike Egypt. In verse 14, prepare for war, Egypt, but Yahweh has already determined that Nebuchadnezzar's sword will devour you. In verse 15, Yahweh will sweep away the strong men of Egypt using Nebuchadnezzar as his instrument. In verse 16, at least in the opinion of the Egyptian people, Pharaoh had a fighting chance when he went up to meet Nebuchadnezzar in Judah, but he showed weakness. He said, let's go again to our own people. Let's retreat from Nebuchadnezzar's oppressive sword, which is what he did. In verse 17, the Egyptian people scorned Pharaoh as being nothing but noise when he went out to fight Nebuchadnezzar in Judah. He let the appointed time in Judah pass by, and now what a disaster they have on their hands. Pharaoh has let the battle come there to Egypt. The overarching truth was that the outcome was already determined in the spiritual realm, and it was not determined militarily or by anything Pharaoh Necho did or could have done. Going on about it, verse 18, as I live, says the king, whose name is Yahweh of armies, surely like Tabor among the mountains and like Carmel by the sea, so he will come. Comment in verse 18, Yahweh says Nebuchadnezzar will come to Egypt as surely as Mount Tabor and Mount Carmel sit where they sit. Concerning the Egyptian city of Memphis, verse 19, you daughter who dwells in Egypt, furnish yourself to go into captivity, for Memphis will become a desolation and will be burned up without inhabitant. Egypt is a beautiful heifer, but destruction out of the north has come. It has come. Also her hired men in the middle of her are like calves of the stall, for they also are turned back. They have fled away together. They didn't stand, for the day of their calamity has come on them, the time of their visitation. Comment in verse 19, the Babylonians will take the Egyptians away captive. The city of Memphis will be burned and made desolate. Egypt will suffer destruction in verse 20. In verse 21, Egypt's hired men are probably mercenaries. They'll retreat. They're about as fearsome as calves raised in a stall. Concerning Egypt, verse 22, its sound will go like the serpent, for they'll march with an army and come against her with axes as woodcutters. Comment in verse 22, its sound will go like the serpent. According to the NET translation notes, the Egyptian royal insignia was a coiled snake ready to strike. But in verse 22, the snake is in no position to strike. It's slithering away. The best it can do is a harmless sound or hiss. And switching images, the Babylonians will be like men with axes cutting down a forest. Verse 23. They will cut down her forest, says Yahweh, though it can't be searched, because they are more than the locusts and are innumerable. Comment in verse 23, switching images again, the Babylonians will be all over Egypt like locusts. Verse 24. The daughter of Egypt will be disappointed. She'll be delivered into the hand of the people of the north. Yahweh of armies, the God of Israel, says, Behold, I'll punish Ammon of No, and Pharaoh and Egypt with her gods and her kings, even Pharaoh and those who trust in him. Comment in verse 25, Yahweh will punish Ammon of No. No is ancient Thebes on the Nile River, about 400 miles south of Cairo. Ammon is the god of that city. And in verse 25, Yahweh will punish all the Egyptian gods and kings. In what way? Defeat will embarrass the Egyptian gods and the pharaohs. Not that Egypt's gods or the pharaohs are anything, but the people think they are. This defeat will correct some of those misconceptions. We saw in the history of World War II that the Japanese emperor claimed to be divine, but defeat proved he wasn't divine. His power and honor evaporated. The honor of Pharaoh and of the Egyptian gods will evaporate when they're defeated. Speaking of the Egyptians, verse 26, I'll deliver them into the hand of those who seek their lives, and into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of his servants. Afterwards it will be inhabited as in the days of old, says Yahweh. Comment in verse 26, Yahweh says he'll deliver Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar, but afterwards Egypt will bounce back as in days of old. But what about Israel bouncing back? Verse 27. But don't you be afraid, Jacob my servant. Don't be dismayed, Israel. For behold, I'll save you from afar, and your offspring from the land of their captivity. Jacob will return, and will be quiet and at ease. No one will make him afraid. Don't be afraid, O Jacob my servant, says Yahweh, for I am with you. For I'll make a full end of all the nations where I have driven you, but I'll not make a full end of you, but I'll correct you in measure and will in no way leave you unpunished. Comment in verse 27, Yahweh will save Israel from afar. They'll think that return is unthinkable, primarily because the Babylonians will never have any reason to release them. But in verse 28, don't be afraid, Jacob my servant, I'm with you. I'll make a full end of the nations where I have driven you, but I'll not make a full end of you, but will correct you in measure, and will in no way leave you unpunished. I'll save you and your offspring from the land of your captivity, in verse 27. Jeremiah 47 is next.